Well, originally this video was going to be about planning out a shoot. So let's say you have some sort of an assignment, or you have an edifice, some sort of natural wonder, a mountain range, or something that you want to go photograph from a certain point, and you don't know which focal lengths to take with you. The easy answer to this, of course, is just take them all, or take your 3 zoom kit, or take your 3 primes, or whatever. There are times when that's not really something you can do. I've been on bush planes where I had to get rid of just 1 pound more weight, and that's either get rid of another water bottle or get rid of a lens. That's kind of a hard choice, going somewhere deep into interior Alaska. In the Himalayas, I was staying about 1,000 feet above where I was working, and I had to walk between the two. And after walking, between the two at a high altitude all day for like a month and a half, it gets to the point where you just can't carry every single lens. So you need to start planning out what you're going to do. There are a lot of times when this is the case. Another example, I was photographing an airborne operation, and me and a couple of the guys in our photography shop were talking about putting somebody up on a nearby hilltop to get a very unique viewpoint. And we were planning out, what focal length that person would need, how many batteries, all kinds of stuff, whether they need to go up there with snowshoes. Many different times in life as a photographer, you're going to need to plan these things out. And so I have this whole big nerdy thing. I've built a calculator that I'll put a link into the description so that you can convert focal lengths to degrees field of vision. And I'll even show you how I can plan, or how I do sometimes plan these things out. But that whole thing got sidelined because as I was walking downtown toward Deschutes Brewing Company for a delicious low ABV pint and some good food, I saw this poster that said there was a free Shakey Graves concert the same night. So I did actually end up going out and shooting some mountains for a demonstration. Shakey Graves and Emily Nenni, who I'd never heard of before, but now I have. So instead of doing all of that, I took my film gear and went and shot the concert. It was free, unticketed, at the Deschutes production facility, main thing. And it was a fantastic concert. I'm super glad I went. It's been, sidebar on that, it's been probably, oh God, I think the last time I photographed a concert at all was around 2009 or 2010, and I have never shot one on film before. So this was a first for me. And to me, new experiences are huge. I feel like everybody should seek out new experiences to a certain point, right? Don't go, too crazy with that. But everybody should seek out new experiences and kind of grow and develop themselves as a person. That's how you become a better person, and all the good things in life. Anyway, I used to do a lot of concert photography on digital, and my best friend when shooting concerts on digital was my fast 50mm prime. You can do almost everything in life on a 50mm prime, and I happen to have a nice fast 50mm prime for my Minolta, and I had it with me, so I was like, perfect, we will make this happen. So it did. Came out with some great photos. We're going to break this up into 3 parts. Part 1. The big mountain photographs. Sorry, let me keep it in the camera box. The big mountain photographs. There we go. Now I'm not gesticulating too wildly. I'll talk about those and how to plan them out. Then part 2, photographing Emily Nenni's portion of the concert, which was a daytime concert, which gives you a lot more flexibility. And then part 3, photographing Shakey Graves, which the same thing can be said for nearly any nighttime concert, and there are some complications with that. So, without further ado, part 1.
So first things first, let's talk about how to find an angle, probably an accurate angle, for a landscape feature that you're going to shoot from a particular viewpoint if you know where that viewpoint is ahead of time. For this example, we're going to use the Three Sisters Mountains and Broken Top, which are visible from the side of the highway as you leave Bend, Oregon and head towards Sisters, Oregon. So you can see them. I'm using Google Earth Pro. The reason I'm using Google Earth Pro is because it allows me to do image overlays. There are actually more elegant ways to do this. This is just a really easy and free one. All right, so here we go. We got North Sister, barely visible in that legend, South Sister, and Broken Top. There's actually a little sub-cone, or I don't know if North Sister is a volcanic mountain or not, but it kind of looks like a sub-cone, called Middle Sister, which is just on the shoulder of North Sister. Okay, so here we go. Here's our target, shooting from probably this shoulder of North Sister to this shoulder of Broken Top. As you head out of Bend, there's this handy-dandy little viewpoint where you can stop on the side of the road. Traffic does sometimes get a little bit crazy, especially like when a whole bunch of people from Portland are leaving and going back to Portland, and it gets all backed up on 20. Just go sometime when that's not happening, and you should be fine. But yeah, a couple of parking spaces here. One ADA accessible parking space. No bathrooms, so don't go there if you're expecting to pee. All right, so I've saved a little viewpoint pin right here. Let's kind of simulate, roughly speaking, what you see from this viewpoint. It's kind of like that. You kind of see these three mountains and Broken Top, which is another mountain. And this is roughly what we're trying to capture. So what I do is I just take the thing and overlay a compass rose onto it, like that. This is pretty easy in Google Earth Pro. Even though it's called Pro, it doesn't cost any money, so don't worry about that. All right, so it's roughly centered on our viewpoint. There we go, roughly centered on our viewpoint. We're just gonna go out here and kind of calculate from here to here, and then alternately from here to here. And also, let's also measure how many degrees roughly we need to shoot to get more or less one mountain. But all right, so here we go from Broken Top. It looks like, I think 180 would be a little bit too wide. That'd be kind of a weak composition. We want it to be a little tighter, so let's go 185 to 190. And on this side, we're looking at 220, maybe 225, probably 220. So 190 to 220, 30 degrees, say as wide as 40 degrees. That's what our target is. And then if we were just shooting north, middle, south, we'd be looking at, I don't know, maybe like 197 degrees to 220, so 23 degrees. And then just for roughly one mountain peak, we're looking at about 10 degrees. So keep those factors, or those numbers in mind, and then we will go calculate them. To convert from focal length to degrees of field of view, there are just a couple of equations that are pretty standard that I'm using here. This software package is another free software package called Desmos. It's a graphing calculator and lets you write stuff like you're writing in Python. All we've got here are two variables. S is the sensor size, whether you're measuring it horizontally or vertically or diagonally, and F is the focal length. The first equation right here on line 7 gives you your result in radians, and then the equation on line 9 gives you your result in degrees. And I've actually plotted out a bunch of common 35 millimeter focal lengths and their equivalents in degrees. Okay, our numbers that we were looking at first, we were looking at about 40, which is around a 50 millimeter lens. Well, that's easy. I always bring my 50 millimeter prime everywhere. Well, the biggest one that we're really focused on was capturing one mountain peak. So 200 millimeter gets us about 10 degrees. So that's pretty simple. We just bring a 50 and a 200. I don't really have a good 200 millimeter prime, although I have been eyeballing a few. So this might be a good opportunity for me to determine if I should spend, a whopping $75 or whatever it is to get a good 200 millimeter prime in one of the camera systems that I currently own. Okay, and there we go. Looks like our 50 millimeter shot of the Three Sisters and Broken Top is actually a little bit wider than we anticipated, but it's still pretty good. I think a good crop would make this a pretty good composition. I would also want to crop out some of that foreground. I think the foreground kind of weakens it a little bit, although it's cool to see the sagebrush and junipers and everything, and then eventually moving to pines and mixed conifers before it gets into the alpine zone. Pretty cool. Not a bad shot. North Sister and Middle Sister kind of together, hiding underneath this layer of clouds, and they have this really cool dramatic lighting that I'm really enjoying here. I love it when I see cloud formations causing dramatic shadows across mountains, because it gives the whole image this sense of depth, and it's really kind of fun. And for the record, this was fully racked out on a 210 millimeter. So by tightening it up a little bit more than that 10 degrees, although the difference between 210 and 10, or 210 millimeters and 200 millimeters is not a whole degree. It's actually pretty tiny. But yeah, so this is a pretty good image. Could probably tweak this, add a little bit of contrast, and have a decent printable photo. And then our next one, we've got South Sister, kind of similar. This was, Expired Ektar was the film stock. And so there's some variation. I'm totally going to blame the expired film stock and not my own shitty processing, which, you can see there's like some water spots and stuff like that. So obviously the variation is my own fault. But there's some variation here in the colors, and that's something you could easily fix with a little bit of post-processing. But yeah, again, really nice dramatic contrast over the snowfields. Just kind of a really fun looking image. The green tends toward blue here in the shadows, and that's kind of cool. And then we've got Broken Top, which isn't as impressive looking of a mountain from far away, but it has glaciers and cirque lakes and all kinds of super cool hiking around there. Definitely a good place to have some fun above 9,000 feet and get a decent day workout in there while you're at it. And then this fence post. I took a photo of it just for funsies, and it's kind of weirding me out because of how flat the fence post looks and how flat the lens is rendering it. I realize a lot of that is perspective and everything, and people will tell you, and they're mostly true, mostly right, that using a telephoto doesn't actually flatten the scene. Well, it does a little bit, just not to a tremendous degree. But this isn't what I'm used to seeing with like lens compression. This is just kind of strange. The optics in this lens are a little weird, but they actually did work out pretty well on faces, which we'll take a look at in a minute.
So what I decided to do for the mountain shoot was take my fast 50 millimeter prime. Great lens for a lot of things. This Rocker X 1.4 50 millimeter. This Rocker X 50 millimeter f 1.4. Fantastic focal length. nice and fast, very sharp, and I haven't had any complaints with it. Haven't had any complaints about it. I haven't complained. I think it's a good lens. Lens number 2, 28 to 85 variable aperture, 3.5 to 4.5. This is a really nice sharp lens. If it were faster, I would say it's probably the best 35 millimeter for the Minolta system, because at 35 millimeters, this thing is just super awesome. If you're not shooting incredibly low light, that's a great lens. And the size, this tiny. Now this 70 to 210 is a bit weird, I found. So like a lot of these, it's a one touch, which means it has a trombone style zooming action. Looks kind of weird when I do that. And then you turn to focus. This actually means that the front of the lens does rotate as you focus. That can be kind of annoying because after you focus, you then have to re-rotate any circular polarizers or anything like that. So you just do that. You could also say, oh no, I'm never going to buy that lens or whatever. That's perfectly fine. Completely understand. In the negative segment, I talk about that kind of weird, the weird effect of when I was shooting the fence post. Very strange. I don't know. However, moving on to part 2, I used that lens almost exclusively to photograph Emily Nenni, and it actually does really well for portraits. I was surprised. I thought it would throw off all kinds of crazy color fringing and make, I don't know, noses look like they're stereoscopic and just whatever weirdness. No, it's actually a pretty good lens. I think there are better lenses. There are definitely better portrait lenses out there. And it helped that I was picking angles where I wasn't going to have a lot of busy stuff in the background. That really does help. If there's blue sky, then it's just blue sky. If, like, you picked an oak tree in late winter when it's completely bare and it's the most fractal thing you have ever seen in your life, and you're photographing somebody in front of that, you're going to end up with some really busy bokeh. But just don't do that, because that's not smart. Or if that's what you're going for, then it is smart if it works for you. Anyway, lots of cool opportunities. I'll give some quick unpaid shout outs because nobody's paying me for any of this. I'll give some quick unpaid shout outs. First of all, this whole thing was put on by Subaru. I don't drive a Subaru. I think Jeeps are way cooler than Subarus, but Subarus are okay. They're fun. They're, other people drive them and they seem to be having fun. Enough clowning about Subarus. Subaru put on a great show. Subaru Winterfest, despite the fact that there was basically no winter here, was awesome. They did a bunch of stuff up at Mount Bachelor, and the pictures tell me that there was a lot of snow. I didn't go up to Mount Bachelor. I probably should have. People came down with glitter, though. They looked like they were having a lot of fun. Also, Deschutes Brewing Company for hosting this awesome unticketed event. And also Solo Stove was there. They made some delicious food on Solo Stove stuff. And then there were other people with tacos and things. There was a man with dogs. I like dogs. Dogs are great. And also a lady with a very, very broad-brimmed hat.
All right, so here's Emily Nenni concert shot 1. Pretty good. Honestly, I was actually really happy, like I've said, with the performance of that 70 to 210 lens. Let me get in really close, had enough light to work with the daytime illumination, and it was fairly flattering with skin tones, so I found that pretty cool. Now, this is where I switched to shooting Cinestill 400D. Previously, I was shooting Ektar, and that Cinestill halation is really kind of coming in strong just in the daytime. Like, look around the microphone. There's a ton of that red bleed over. And then around Emily's silhouette. That's the word, silhouette. You can also see kind of like a black red edge, which like does make her pop out against the background, but it's not necessarily how I would choose to do it. However, no complaints. The film actually performed pretty well. Shot number 2, we caught her pushing up her glasses. That's something that people who wear glasses do all the time. Also, how about that patina on her guitar? She definitely uses it. Pretty awesome. I dug. Shot number 3, here she is looking disapproving. Probably just smiling or breathing or something like that. Photos can catch you with weird expressions on your face. But yeah, again, some of that halation coming in around the microphone. Pretty much any areas of high contrast, it'll happen like that. Then shot number 4, here's Emily again looking emotional, quizzical. I don't know. You can decide, I guess. But yeah, pretty decent. Did a good job of isolating her and providing just enough depth of field. And then shot number, what are we on, 5 now? Coming at you from the other angle. The background's a little bit busier, but the lens actually did a reasonable job of kind of blurring it out, so it's not that big of a deal. Okay, and then here we are, moving on to dogs. This is a dog. I like dogs. Dogs are cool. Next shot. Oh yeah, the same lens. Next shot. Here are 3 dogs on the back of a Subaru. That's pretty iconic. And then we move to, boom, here's a dog jumping onto its owner's back. Now, it sometimes feels like my dogs do that. Actually, I think they literally do that sometimes, but not nearly as coordinated of a fashion. And then lady with broad-brimmed hat. Just a, person who had a great hat, who I decided to take a portrait of. So like in this shot, a little bit of a busy background, but I feel like the lens actually did a pretty good job of picking it out. So overall, I would say that this extremely affordable lens did a pretty good job.
So it took all of those photos. But yeah, Emily Nenni, I'm not a country fan. Her thing is definitely like country, more twangy country. So a little more like old school-ish, not super old school like Johnny Cash or anything like that. More like, I don't know. Like I said, not a country person, but it was more interesting than like, say, modern 2026 country, when basically the country singer just bought like a pop or R&B track and is just singing it with a horrible country twang. And like, I don't know, man. Like, that's Emily Nenni was super cool. And they like her and her band played a solid 90-minute set for an opener. That's exhausting, but good on them. Like, fantastic. Now, part 3, low light concert photography. So, the best advice I can give anyone for shooting at a concert, especially now that I've shot one with film, I'll talk about both film and digital. Use a fast prime and get your shots and your focus down. Take your time. You'll get excited. If you're shooting film, if it's not a camera with an auto advance, some kind of auto winder, you will end up having to take a pause while you prepare for the next shot.
All right, so let's move on to the after dark portion of the show, the Shakey Graves portion. I saw him before in Austin with Norah Jones and a bunch of other acts doing a Neil Diamond tribute concert, which was kind of cool. He's always a really good showman. So for this portion, I was shooting Cinestill 400D, pushed 2 stops to 1600, and it did actually pretty well. Yeah, as you could expect when pushing film. Very high contrast, a little bit of reduced dynamic range, and a little bit more noise, and definitely a lot of character. So again, boom, lots of big halation coming through. Yeah, there is no denying it. Just a ton of that characteristic halation. I keep using this word halation. It's because the light shoots through the film as it's being exposed, bounces off the back plate, and exposes the film again from the back. And because the rear layer of the film is kind of a yellowy amber color, you get these big bloomy red highlights like around those 3 spotlights. Anyhow, yeah, pretty much everything in here is shot with a 50 millimeter all the way open at f1.4. I like the shot, really nice, kind of expressive. Now moving on to shot number 2. Man, what a difference in lighting. And this happens at concerts and stuff like that, where they're messing with their DMX controlled lighting and everything looks all crazy and stuff, but it makes things just so darn awkward for photographers, right? So you just kind of have to wait for the right shot. But you've got a ton of blue lighting and some halation around it, which just makes for a really moody shot. And it's kind of cool. And moving on to this orange shot here, this one, I was actually surprised this one turned out. It was so stinking dim during that portion of the show. And as a result, or related at the very least, it's a very dim shot. And that like super moody lighting does give some really unique opportunities, like this one of Shakey with the spotlight basically just on his guitar. Really kind of, just a really moody shot. Fun though. I actually, really enjoy that one. It puts the focus right in the center and you've got some silhouettes back in the blue, and that's kind of fun. But not everything is that easy. So this next one here, I ended up scanning it in as black and white because the lighting was just so terrible in color. However, it actually turns out pretty well in black and white, although not as well as if I had shot this with some like Delta 3200 or T-Max or something like that. And then after that, we've got this just really actually well lit, kind of moody lighting, blues and ambers shot here, Shakey, just kind of playing and looking out at the audience moodily. That's a nice shot. I like it. Okay, and then last up, we've got this closing shot with all the lights just sort of blasting out and everything's like extremely bright and vivid, and Shakey's a little bit out of focus, and the focus point is, I don't know, somewhere there in the smoke, but it's a great shot and I wouldn't trade it. It is fantastic. So, I mean, I'm keeping all of these in my binder of negatives anyway, but yeah, no, it's a great shot. Super happy with how this whole thing turned out.
So, okay, when the lights on stage are going like this, and they're doing all kinds of cool and crazy effects, try not to get too excited. Treat it like you are shooting for production. Get the lens up, figure out your orientation, get in the right spot in the audience. Or, if you have a press pass or the people are super cool, you can get in front of the barriers. Get in the right spot and just wait for the lighting and for the singer's emotions, the songwriter, performer, whoever's emotions and everything to just be showing through absolutely perfectly. When that happens, snap. Then prepare again. So the first time I did concert photography was, I was shooting a bunch of punk rock shows and I was using a 50 millimeter f1.8, the Canon Nifty 50, little dust pump that is a fantastic lens, but they get super dirty. But they're so ubiquitous and cheap that who cares? I think I broke that lens and I got another one for like $80. Not a big deal. That you can, on digital, you can basically just, shoot as much as your SD card, CF Express card, whatever it is, can handle. And accuracy by volume. If you come away with 3 to 7 selects, you can call that a success, no matter how many times you had to shoot. Shooting more just means you have to cut more out. On film, you've got one roll at a time. So 36 exposures. I came away with, I would say like, well, okay. I came away with 11 sufficient photos that I wouldn't feel bad about putting in a newspaper article. And I feel like I came away with 5 just absolute bangers. Okay, so I'll talk about Cinestill 400D for a little bit. I don't know that I would have actually chosen to shoot Cinestill 400D this time around, but I'm actually running low on color film. Yeah, I was walking out and about, and there's a super cool set of film fridges that are kind of like ersatz film stores, actual film stores, maybe piggyback film stores, called Little Radical Film Shop. I did not take any footage or photos of the Little Radical Film Shop fridges because I haven't asked the proprietors for permission, and I'd kind of like to interview them and maybe put that in a future episode. But there are 2 of them. One is in Sisters, beautiful Sisters, Oregon. If you haven't been to Sisters, Oregon, and you are ever driving through the Cascades, the Oregon Cascades, highly recommend going to Sisters. It's a fun little place up in the pines, and there's a bunch of cool stuff nearby. The other is in Bend, Oregon. You can just check them out. It's like littleradicalfilmshop.com or something like that, or just GTS. Google that shit. Yeah, so popped into the fridge because last time I was there, they're a great place for like, you need, field expedient resupply. Like this is your ammo dump for film, basically. Like, so I went over there to the film fridge. Last time I was there, there was some Portra 800, and I was like, bam, that's exactly what I need. I'll get some Portra 800, walk over to the show and shoot it. They didn't have that. They had Cinestill 400D, which is a 400 ISO box rated film that has Cinestill's very signature halation, big bloomy red, sometimes yellow highlights around light sources. I hadn't shot Cinestill 400D before, so I thought, hell, why not? I'll give it a try. So I did. The entire Emily Nenni set was shot on Cinestill 400D with my Minolta SR505 on this lens, the 70 to 210 70 to 210 f4 lens. Pretty decent. And I think it did actually work, as I've already gone into. So that's kind of cool. I think if I were doing it again, though, I'd take Portra 800 or actually some Delta 3200 and have some black and white fun. Also, if I were planning it out and not just doing this spontaneously, I would 100% take along a Canon 85mm f1.2 lens FD version for my AE1 program, because that would be longer reach, a little bit faster, pretty much perfect. When shooting something like concert photography or something in low light, a 50mm actually is about right if you can get to the right spot, because to eliminate handheld shake when taking photographs, it is ideal to set your shutter speed to roughly equivalent to your focal length. What that means is, or a little bit faster, if your focal length is 50mm, if you can set your shutter speed to 1/50th of a second, since most cameras don't do that, 1/60th of a second is pretty much perfect, then you're good to go. If you bumped it up to 100mm, you would then have to set it at least 1/100th of a second, which means you're losing a lot less. You're losing a lot more light. You're getting less light on your film. So to get the same level of exposure, you have to be pushing it even more stops or having an even wider aperture. 85mm and f1.2, it's a tiny bit faster and it's a tiny bit longer, and you would have to set your shutter speed a tiny bit more. But I could probably push Portra 800 2 stops to 3200 ISO, or shoot a 3200 ISO black and white film with zero pushing on an 85mm f1.2, and that's pretty much perfect. I think that's about the sweet spot. If you're getting any narrower than that, it's hard to really nail focus on anything. And as some of those Shakey Graves negatives show, if you've got like some good emotion and some emotion in motion, then you don't necessarily need an absolutely perfect focus, because we're not talking a portrait. We're talking an action shot. So I think that's a good trade-off. If everything is perfect daylight, then absolutely shoot it, f8 or f4 or whatever it is you need to just isolate your subject and still get a good solid exposure. Hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.